one more moment. All right, everyone. My name is Dina, and I am one of the team here at Elderwerks Educational Services. Elderwerks is a non-for-profit organization whose focus is on everything senior, everything aging, so that our older adults can age well where they are, and their families have the resources they need to help them. Our team is experts on anything senior living, the different options out there, all of the care solutions, services, and different benefits. And we solely exist to make the world better for our older adults so they can have the lives they richly deserve. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube station as well as on Facebook. Today's presentation is special to my heart because I had 3 of my 4 grandparents with forms of dementia. And I think that everybody needs to know how to communicate. And we are blessed to have Arlene Schiff, our RN and Elderwerks educator, be presenting today, communicating with a person living with dementia. And I think that terminology itself is they are more than the disease. They're living with dementia. And I know Arlene will speak to that. Please put any of your questions in the chat and we will answer those questions at the end of the session today. Arlene, you can tell everybody about yourself, and thanks for doing this for us today.
Thanks, Tina. Good morning, everybody. Nice to have you with us. I don't know where you guys all are, but we had quite a few storms this morning. So I see the sun is coming out. So hopefully we'll have a good program here. And again, as Dina said, please don't hesitate to go into the chat and ask any questions or provide any comments, any experiences, any questions that you may have. As Dina said, my name's Arlene Schiff. I'm a nurse and education specialist with Elderwerks. I've been in the healthcare field my entire career. I've been working with seniors and their families and guiding them through the dementia journey for almost 20. So want to get started here. We all understand that navigating conversations with someone who has dementia can be both challenging, but it also can be deeply rewarding. So our goal today is to really share practical strategies and compassionate approaches to help you connect more effectively with and meaningfully with your loved ones or perhaps the people that you're caring for. So whether you're a caregiver or a family member, we hope to provide you with some valuable insights and tools. So let's dive in and explore how we can support and communicate with people living with dementia. Today, we're going to talk about why a person living with dementia has unique communication needs. In order to communicate with a person living with dementia, it's really important to understand how communication normally flows and how you normally communicate with others and why someone living with dementia communicates differently. We'll discuss the unique communication needs and some strategies, and we'll discuss how our communication and the way we communicate really directly impacts their reactions to us and our ability to meet their needs and our relationships with them. And again, because communication can be difficult for a person living with dementia, we have to learn to look for the meaning in theirs and our verbal and nonverbal communication. So what is communication? It's the process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. I'm going to show you 3 brief videos. They each send the same message, yet each is sent in a different way. So let's take a look.
I love you. Did you hear that?
I hope that made you smile as it made me smile. 3 different ways to say I love you, but not everyone will understand those 3 different ways. So that's why we have to understand, the importance of clear and concise language. It's so important. Normal communication refers to the everyday typical way that people exchange information. It's both verbal and nonverbal forms of interaction. It includes speaking and listening, as well as our gestures and our facial expressions. It really sets the foundation to understand how communicating with someone living with dementia can differ from these norms. So in order to understand the problems with communicating with a person living with dementia, we need to look at the normal communication process. Every effective communication event has 4 things. There's a sender. It's the person who's literally communicating the thoughts or feelings or needs. It's like if I'm telling my husband what we need from the grocery store, I'm sending that message. The coding process begins in my brain. I'm able to then verbalize what's needed, and then it needs to be decoded. So I would send that information to the receiver. They pick up that information, and then they're decoding it. It begins at that point with a level of understanding. With my husband, we've lived together so long. He's picked up the communication nuances that I have, and I do the same with him. He may ask a question to clarify what I want, so he's not yelled at when he comes back from the grocery store. But the encoder then is the person who develops and sends the message, and they determine how the message will be received by the other person. And that person, needs to make some adjustments to the message so it's received the way they want it to be received. And encoding then turns the thoughts into communication. The encoder takes into account any noise that might interfere with their message, such as distractions or other influences going around in the room. So there's a lot of things that are happening with communication that we think is just so simple. And when people are communicating and they are both cognitively intact, there's no dementia between 2 people, then communication runs smoothly. It's called bidirectional, means that it's shared by both the sender and the receiver. And under normal communications, it's shared. It's a mutual exchange. But when there's dementia, something is lost. So it's not a shared experience anymore. And it's not a shared responsibility anymore, because there's a breakdown somewhere in the process. And it might be in the inability to create the message or encode the message or decode the message. And it's the disease itself, as Dina had stated, it's the disease that they live with that has robbed them of the ability to complete that communication process. So with this, disruption in communication, you'll see frustration. That can be from the person living with dementia. It can be from the person who is just trying to communicate, and they're getting frustrated because the person living with dementia isn't understanding. And sometimes when we see anger or frustration in the person who has dementia, in healthcare, we refer to those as behaviors. And again, I'll say this several times throughout the presentation, that anytime you may see or recognize a behavior, it's important to know that that is always a form of communication. So how do we understand the unique communication needs of somebody living with dementia? It requires patience and understanding in communicating due to their cognitive impairments. We then need to adapt our communication to the individual's capabilities and preference. So remember that. We need to adapt. They're not going to adapt to us. Someone years ago said to me that the person living with dementia is no longer in our world. It's now time that we need to adapt and get into their world. So we need to be concise and clear in what we're communicating. Emotional content will take precedence over factual content. So let me give you an example of that. I used to work in a senior living community, and a woman had just moved into a very large 2-bedroom apartment in independent living. She was living alone. I knew that she had recently lost her husband. Her 2 boys had moved her back to Chicago from another state. And I went up to introduce myself and see if there was anything that she needed. And she is running from room to room looking for her husband. And again, who I know is deceased. And I had to take a step back and think, she's living in independent living. I didn't get any information that she had dementia, and it might have been the early stages and her sons didn't know. But she is literally frantic. Where's her husband? So I immediately went into understanding that emotional content and said, you know what? He went to get some groceries. The point there is, number one, she was frantic, sad, and worried. She didn't need to, in that moment, relive his death. Then that would make her devastated. So she took that information that I shared with her. He went to get some groceries, and knowing dementia, she's not going to remember this in 5 minutes. So she was able to calm down and go along with her day. And then we had to deal with some other issues, obviously, that nobody knew that she was in the early stages of dementia. So again, there's changes in cognitive abilities and language skills, and we need to, again, understand that and get into their world. So definition of dementia, in the healthcare world, sometimes it's now referred to as major neurocognitive disorder. If you would ever hear someone say that, that's dementia. But again, in most of our society and even in medical literature, it's still called dementia. So it's important to know dementia isn't a specific disease. It's a descriptive term for a collection of symptoms that can be caused by many different disorders that affect the brain. People with dementia have significantly impaired intellectual functioning that interferes with normal activities and relationships. And that's how it is defined, and that's how a diagnosis is made, that it interferes with normal activities of daily living. They'll lose problem-solving abilities and sometimes emotional control, even personality changes and behavioral problems as well. Just to, again, it gives some more definition. Dementia it's an overall term for a particular group of symptoms. You think of dementia as a broad umbrella term. It covers a group of symptoms that like loss of memory, judgment, language, and it's caused by the permanent damage or death of the brain's nerve cells. Memory loss, it affects how a person with dementia communicates. The loss of ability to remember affects both listening and speaking aspects of how a person communicates. The symptom of memory loss is required for a diagnosis of dementia, and there's many parts of the brain that have to do with memory. And we'll take a look briefly at a normal brain versus a dementia related brain. You see there's the cerebral cortex, which is a critical region responsible for language. The healthy cerebral cortex enables language and information processing. And in dementia, this structure shrivels up and becomes damaged. And that's what causes, cognitive function to decline, and thinking and memory are particularly affected. You'll see, deterioration of neural pathways and brain tissue, and all of that gives you difficulty in processing information, forming coherent thoughts, and again, the impaired ability to communicate. So with dementia, you see the deterioration of language skills and fluency. There's the loss of ability to even begin or continue with the conversation. Someone might start a conversation, you think it's going, very well, and then all of a sudden it stops. There's a difficulty in understanding and processing information. And then interpreting verbal and nonverbal cues, those are impaired as well. So some of the challenges may have with communicating with the person living with dementia, it might be the ability to maintain attention. There's a tendency to forget the subject or the context of an ongoing conversation. There's forgetfulness. You get off track. They're easily distracted. If there's another noise in a room or loud music, they can easily be distracted and not be able to come back to the conversation. There might be difficulty in answering questions. They get certainly overwhelmed if you give them a lot of choices, and certainly you'll see frustration if there's too much and too many questions at the same time. People with dementia, there's also challenges in orientation, understanding somebody's surroundings, understanding time. These are all crucial and important for communication. And that frontal lobe in your brain plays a significant role. And as dementia progresses, there's much more confusion regarding time and place, even their own identity. They'll ask frequent questions, where are they, or say that they need to go somewhere else. They may not recognize you as their caregiver or ask who you are. They may not understand what you're trying to do to help them. And they may not be aware of date and time. There's another process that affects your brain, and it's called a mild cognitive impairment. It looks like it may be the beginning of dementia. It can be, but oftentimes it's just a mild cognitive impairment and it doesn't progress to dementia. An example I can share with you is my dad years ago had very serious case of pneumonia, was in the intensive care unit, and then in the hospital for several weeks, then went into rehab, and then went home. I will tell you, my family is in Chicago. We're all very close. My kids always visit grandpa. They saw him in the hospital, saw him in rehab. And he came home to the independent living community where he had been living for about 5 years. And we settled him in. I went to work. My daughter came to visit him. And after she visited him, she called me and said, "Oh, Grandpa looks great." It was just, he looks great. He's comfortable back at home. A minute later, got a call from my dad, and he said, "I had a lovely girl come to visit me. Who was she?" I was devastated. And please, if you know me, if you know my family, my daughter to this day doesn't know that he didn't know who she was in that moment. So please don't share that with her. But I said, "Dad, that was Ilana." And I reminded him, and with mild cognitive impairment, he was able to remember her in the future, and it wasn't an issue. But different things affect people, and mild cognitive impairment can look like dementia, and it affects their communication. But he, in the moment, was very confused. So we also see visual spatial challenges with people living with dementia. They have depth perception issues. So sometimes it's difficult to judge distances. They have sometimes struggles in recognizing and identifying common objects. They may take a look at a remote control and think it's a cordless phone. There's spatial relationship difficulties, how things relate to another in space, like setting a table or arranging items in a specific order are affected. There's difficulty getting lost, even in familiar environments. There's a reduced ability to process and interpret this visual information. So sometimes it affects how they understand visual cues. They can interpret patterns or textures differently, so it may make getting dressed difficult. There's difficulty in recognizing familiar faces, and that will include at times family members and caregivers. Excuse me. Sometimes there's mirror confusion. They may not recognize themselves in their own reflection in a mirror. They may think it's a new friend. Or they may see something and get frightened. And then you see writing and difficulty challenges. You see difficulty in, again, things like distance and shapes, walking in a hallway that's tiled. They may see the patterns or colors as something that may cause fear or anxiety. We saw a resident get very frightened. There was a dark rug in their bathroom, and they didn't want to step forward. They thought it was a black hole. So we needed to remove that rug so they could see the floor, and they didn't interpret that as a hole that they were going to fall into. So we know that dementia does affect communication. When communicating with someone with dementia, the main goal here is to exchange information, but it's also to share meaningful moments and provide opportunities for success. We want them to experience joy in their day and, very importantly, maintain their dignity. So it's always important to remember that dignity and respect and choice is a common theme across caring for someone with dementia, and the manner in which we support them and help them with their activities of daily living. Again, we want to make sure that we are supporting them and providing respect and dignity. I'm going to show you a couple brief videos here of how someone is affected negatively and positively by how we communicate and act and react with someone with dementia.
So you need to sit up, swing your feet around, and then stand up. Let me help you. Come on.
Oh, thank you. I need my, I can't find...
You can't find what?
I can't find my...
Miss Caputo, what? Is it your robe?
No.
Do you need to use the bathroom?
No.
Very frustrating, difficult to watch. Feel free, put in the chat or the Q&A how you feel and how it made you feel. Think about the person who was trying to provide care. What did you notice about her? I mean, her words were strong. Her body language wasn't caring. She wasn't smiling. Her tone was really ineffective. Let's take a look at this video as well and see how it makes you.
All right. Would you like for me to help you? Here you go. Swing your legs over to me. There you go. You ready? All right, here you go. 1, 2, 3. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You okay?
I need my.
It's okay. Take your time.
I can't find the.
Your robe?
No.
You want your
no,
robe?
No, I can't find my.
Oh, I know what it is. Your glasses.
What? Oh,
It's okay. They're fine.
did I break them?
They're just fine. See?
You see the difference in the tone and the caring and the empathy. That makes all the difference in the world. We know sometimes it can be frustrating, but that's what helps someone with dementia. Just to briefly go through, in the early stages of dementia, you see forgetfulness, repeating themselves. They may admit that their memory isn't good. You may notice that there's difficulty with calculations or handling money. Routine tasks take a little longer. There might be a lack of safety awareness, but at this point, it's memory loss that is disrupting daily life. And they may be aware of their difficulties, and you may see a little bit of withdrawal from their activities because they're concerned that other people will be aware of their difficulties as well. When they move through the middle stages, communication again gets a little bit more difficult. You'll see more of the avoidance of social situations. Initiating a conversation will be difficult. So you might need to start a conversation like, do you like chocolate? This may start a conversation, about candy, or if it's the holidays, like if it's Christmas time, you can say something like, my favorite part of Christmas is Santa. What's yours? So you, again, might need to initiate that conversation. You'll see more difficulty with comprehension, and you'll see much more repetition. In late stages, you'll see increased confusion regarding long-term memory, that misidentification of people and objects, losing track of dates and seasons and the passages of time. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not happening immediately. So if you were to say tomorrow or next week is the 4th of July, they won't comprehend that. They'll struggle with their vocabulary, saying something, calling it by the wrong name, like calling a watch a hand clock, or calling something a thingamajig or a whatchamacallit, because they can't come up with the right word. And you'll see these increases in behaviors because they're communicating and verbalizing less, and they become more frustrated because they can't tell you what they need. So how do we help make communication easier? Again, the first step is understanding that it's the disease that's causing the changes in communication skills. The next is trying to find some tips that make communication easier. So effective communication is so important. It's important to show, a warm, loving, matter-of-fact manner. Be open to the person's concerns, even if they're hard to understand. Let them make some decisions and stay involved. Be patient if you see an angry outburst. Remember that it is the illness talking. You need to start by ensuring that you have their attention. Use their preferred name and what they, again, normally would answer to, not honey or dear. Use their name. Sometimes personal touch can make a difference in just establishing rapport and even showing respect. Explain your actions and your intentions. That helps reduce that anxiety. Like you saw when the two different caregivers, one comes in like a bull in a china shop and takes the covers off of her. That's frightening. She didn't understand what was happening. And because they have a delay in comprehension, you need to wait about 15 seconds with each question that you're asking them, because they might need that time to comprehend that. And go slowly, explain step by step. Remember that communication isn't just about words. Your body language really conveys a lot. So open and friendly body language will really warm someone to you as well, because they'll pick up if we're angry or stressed. Keep language clear and straightforward. Avoid complex sentences. Speak slowly. And again, with patience, because rushed communication is very overwhelming. They need that time to process. Keep the instructions simple, one instruction at a time. Use a request rather than a command. Can I, may I, not you will now do this. It's important to use softer terms. Again, remember always that processing of information takes longer, and that they have difficulty in expressing themselves. So respond to their emotions that are expressed. Take a look at their body language, their facial expression. Is there a grimace on their face? Try to understand what their emotions are. Are they holding on to their belly? Could they have a stomach ache? Or are they holding on to their mouth? Do they have a toothache? So again, remember the tone of your voice, how loud it is. Encourage a two-way conversation as long as possible. But again, direct, specific, and positive. It's always, remember your manners. Please do this instead of don't do this. Thank you for helping, even if the results aren't perfect. Be positive and encouraging. So enhancing communication with someone living with dementia. Oops, sorry about that. The impact of eye contact and body positioning. Eye contact is so important. You also have to know that navigating visual fields is also important. The visual fields of older adults, and specifically and particularly those with dementia, may become more narrow due to age-related changes. If you put your arms outstretched and you wiggle your fingers, can you see your fingers wiggling? You probably can. And if you move your arms in, you certainly can. Well, someone with dementia, their field of vision diminishes. So, if you wiggle your hands when they're outstretched about, 45 degrees, that might be someone's visual field in mid-stage dementia. If you bring your arms really close and wiggle your fingers, that's someone's visual field in the end stage of dementia. So if you're coming from the side of them and they don't see you, and you just put your hand on their shoulder, but you're still behind them, you might frighten them. So you need to make sure you are moving slowly and they are becoming aware of you and that you're in their field of vision. And side note of this as well, if you're asking them to eat breakfast and you put a plate in front of them, make sure that it's directly in front of them. If they like coffee every morning and you put their coffee to the side and you're wondering why they're not drinking their coffee, move the coffee in front of them so they can see it, because they might not drink it because they're not really taking a look. They aren't able to visualize it. Our interactions, we know that if you express empathy and patience, that can will provide a lot of comfort and reassurance to a person living with dementia. If there's active living, listening, we need to adapt our communication style to really offer a better understanding. It's important to use some visual aids for communication, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, because lack of understanding and impatience can really cause distress and have a negative impact. So again, the do's and don'ts, use these as a guide for, what really to avoid. We need to use that simple and clear language, be patient, allow that time for processing, remember that our nonverbal cues are important, and respond with empathy. Don't use that complex language or long sentences. They're not going to remember the beginning of the sentence by the time you get to the end. Don't rush them. All that's going to do is frustrate them. Don't argue with someone with dementia. You're not going to win. Avoid, domination or confrontation. Don't speak in baby language. That's really disrespectful. They're not a baby. Speak in adult tones, but again, with empathy and compassion. Don't say things like you must or you have to, or remember, Mom, remember when we used to do this? They're not going to remember. Even come in and say, hi, Mom, it's Arlene, I'm your daughter. That's okay. Don't come in and say, remember, Mom, I'm your daughter. That's frustrating. Understanding the difficulty, again, complex language and instructions. We need to use the clear sentences. Repeat key information. That's okay for us to keep repeating important information. Always remember those nonverbal cues. Our body language, our facial expressions, they pick up on that, and it's so important. Remember to maintain that eye contact. I'm going to show you a video now of what's called the positive approach. If you don't know Teepa Snow, she is provides dementia training, and it provides, go to YouTube, you'll see her more extended videos on positive approach to care. She is world renowned and teaches great lessons. So this is important to pay close attention of what she is doing to gain this person's trust.
I'm going to get on the, are you right-handed?
Yes.
I need to be on the dominant side of the individual because that's where they have motor memory for doing all kinds of tasks. They don't know how to use their other hand nearly as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on this side. Now, hold hands like you normally hold hands. Shake hands like you normally shake hands. Go ahead and shake somebody's hand. And realize there's nothing real comfortable about that. I mean, once you shake hands, then it's like, okay, let go. And what we can end up with is a tug of war. Or late in the disease, people with dementia often like a lot of contact, and they'll squeeze you and actually hurt you, and it's like, ow, 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 ow. And where are you going to grab to get them loose? On the wrist, and what you're going to do is bruise them again. Shake hands, but then immediately slide up around so that what you're doing is holding on palm to palm, thumb to thumb, and you've got a lot of palm contact. Try that with your partner. And then turn it so their hand is on top of yours, and just relax the hand so that it's very clear it's relaxed. What you're doing is you're putting pressure in the palm, and pressure in a human being's palm calms them down. So what you're actually doing is helping to calm them even while we're doing things, because I'm giving them input into the sensory system. Okay? The other thing that I can do is take the other hand and lay it on top of the hand. And what I'm creating is artificial warmth and padding. What are they missing? warmth and patting. So all of a sudden we're feeling more comfortable. Now there's a big difference between me being down here where she can see me, because remember the visual field problems? What happens if I'm up here?
I know. I just see the.
Yeah, and what if I face her like this? What she's going to start to do is mess with me here, or she doesn't realize what I'm doing and it feels to her like I'm bossing her around. So I want to either sit down or get down so I'm at her level and she can really look at me. The other thing I can do, by applying just a little bit of pressure, she'll automatically look, and now I can talk to her.
So again, did you notice the placement of the hands? The other person's hand goes on top. That allows them the feeling of being in charge. So also remember, if you extend your hand and the other person doesn't reciprocate, it may be that they're just not ready to engage. So you may want to wait a moment and try again, because you don't want to cause agitation. So remember, in the video, it showed Tipa cueing the person. She was using both visual and verbal communication. So in dementia, you begin with the verbal cueing in the early stages, and as dementia advances, you may need to add visual cueing as well. And then in the more advanced, you may, you'll add hands on assist. You may notice, when someone in the early stages of dementia, you can hand them their toothbrush and they know what to do. As dementia advances, you might need to do the nonverbal cueing and visual cueing and show with your hand what you want them to do. And then in the late stages, you may need to assist them. So we talk a lot about empathy. Empathy is crucial. It's so important for our caregivers, our family members, to really cultivate that empathy through active engagement and genuine concern for the well-being of the person living with dementia. It's important to create a supportive environment. You want to stay calm, validate, listen, and acknowledge any frustrations they may have, even if it may sound illogical to you. You can say things like, I understand you're upset, or I know this is hard. Empathy is about understanding feelings and, again, getting into their world. You need to appreciate their abilities. Don't concentrate on their disabilities. Appreciate their abilities, and always communicate with respect. And that will hopefully bring joy to their world as well as yours. Patience, so crucial, right? Someone with dementia needs that longer time to process and respond information. Rushing that communication will cause frustration and anxiety for both the individual with dementia as well as the person communicating. Patience, it just allows for more relaxed and effective interactions. Waiting for a response or understanding repeated questions, you need to have patience. And it's something that just needs to sit on your shoulder and remember patience, patience, patience. So active listening, what is that? It involves that you are fully concentrating, you are understanding, you're responding, you're actively involved in that conversation, you are listening. You want to show that there's active listening and empathy, that their thoughts and their feelings are being acknowledged, that they as a human being are being valued. Its impact, it's listening and helping and understanding the message beyond the words. It's interpreting those nonverbal cues, and it's promoting trust and comfort in what you're communicating. Again, I know that we are repeating this, but it's because it's so important. You've got to keep it simple, clear, and uncomplicated. Be a good listener. Show that respect and empathy. You need to encourage and be attentive to emotional cues, and respond appropriately to those. It's important to create a safe and supportive emotional environment. We know that those unspoken words are just as important as a spoken word. And it's so important, especially at a time when someone can no longer express themselves verbally. So, when someone has facial grimacing, it might occur at any time. If you're feeding someone and they grimace, they might not like what they're eating. They might be full. If you see someone pacing, it could be a sign of boredom, but it also can be anxiety. How many people pace when they're nervous? We've heard about the expectant father pacing. It's a sign of anxiety. Well, for someone with dementia, it can be a sign of anxiety as well, because something isn't part of their normal routine. They might be communicating with crying or yelling or hand movements. These can all be signs of anxiety, and they're trying to communicate that. It could be frustration, pain, sadness, or anger. And it's then our job to find out what's causing this. What are they trying to communicate? You might see somebody rocking in their chair. Again, it could be anxiety. It could be they might need to use the bathroom. So we need to ask ourselves, what is going on? Be a detective and try to figure out what they're trying to communicate. If they're rocking, when did they last use the bathroom? Ask them if they need to use the bathroom, or say, let's take a walk to the bathroom, and motion to them to get up out of their chair. So we need to, again, be aware of what we're seeing in them. Using visual aids could be a tremendous cue for people with dementia, and we need to tailor the visual aids to their preferences and needs. It can really be an effective way to communicate with someone. You can use pictures or diagrams, or even just words. Sometimes they won't comprehend what you are saying, but they will comprehend what they're reading. So if you want them to get dressed, you can put signs on their dresser that your underwear is in this drawer, t-shirts are in this drawer, pants are in this drawer. So visual cues can help them. Again, it could be pictures, diagrams. It can be used, you can use a calendar to help as well. But visual aids do help in a person living with dementia. You can use photographs. Put together albums, so you could go through photographs of family experiences, and it will remind them of positive things. They might not remember being there at the time, but it might evoke just some positive responses. And again, using different symbols and conveying basic messages, charts, diagrams can also help as well. Being present. Want to discuss a little bit about what it means to be present and how important that is in communicating. It might be helpful to understand what not being present may look like, such as talking to somebody else and not paying attention to the person you're with, talking to another caregiver when you're trying to help them eat, or talking to your brother or sister while you're trying to assist mom with eating, or not communicating with someone when you're trying to bathe them, coming into a room and just doing things, cleaning up, and not communicating with somebody. That's, in a normal situation, that's disrespectful. With a person living with dementia, it's also disrespectful. Interrupting someone who's trying to say something or finishing their sentence for them, or or arguing with them, that too is disrespectful. It doesn't change when they have dementia. So you have to ask yourself, how were you trying to be present? How were you trying to communicate? Or what were you doing that was showing disrespect? It's important to try to give them control in situations, because in most of these situations, they've lost a lot of control. So any bit of control that you can provide them with will help. So it's important to, give your full attention, create quiet and focused environments, minimize that external stimulus that might divert attention. If there's, loud music playing, that might not be positive for them. Make it soft and relaxing music. Convey warmth and openness with your body language and your eye contact. That active listening, listen to what they're saying, showing that their thoughts and feelings are valued and important. Use that clear, calm tone of voice. I know it can sometimes be stressful, but it's important to remember. Respect their personal space. Remember, everybody's got that circle around them that is their comfort zone and their personal space. So don't be intrusive. Don't be intrusive with your gesture or your movements. Again, patience, allow that person to express themselves, be flexible, be empathetic, respond with empathy and acknowledging their feelings. Take your time, validate, be in the moment, embrace that concept of being present and communicating with a person living with dementia, because that involves creating a supportive and respectful environment. Use soft music, use that tactile stimulation with a soft blanket. Involve your loved one in activities like folding laundry or watering plants. Give them a sense of purpose. And if the laundry isn't folded to your satisfaction, let it go. Reminiscing is always great with photos or keepsakes. Pet therapy, bringing in a therapy annual can be incredibly therapeutic. Even drawing or coloring or making crafts. I had a woman one time who was exhibiting some challenging behaviors for her family. And I wish I came up with this idea. I was working with an occupational therapist at the time who helped with this. The woman, throughout her life, loved Barbra Streisand. And the occupational therapist made some very small puzzles with large popsicle sticks. And on each puzzle, it was the face of Barbra Streisand from her different roles in different movies. And on the back, once the puzzle was put together, was information on what Barbra was doing at the time in her life. And the person could still read and comprehend what they were reading. And so I was the lucky one to bring in the puzzle to her. And if I could share the joy on this woman's face, she embraced me, hugged me. She was so happy to be able to do something that was so meaningful to her. And then in the background, we were playing some of Barbra's music. It made her so happy. So remember things like that. What brought the person that you loved most joy in their life, and try to create some activities around that for them. So we've talked about a lot of things today. Remember that we need to tailor our communication. We started with the understanding that the brain changes and how it changes. And remember that it's the disease that is changing them. It's still them underneath there. So remember how we communicate with someone. That it's not just about listening and speaking or sending and receiving. It's more than hearing what someone has to say. You need to listen what their words are through their actions, as well as what our words are and what our actions are. It's our tone of voice. It's our body language. It's making someone feel heard and being present. So remember that effective communication is so important in caring with a loved one with dementia. So I'd like to open this. We've got a few minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them.
Arlene, you are amazing. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions in the chat, but I will tell you, I had a senior in my life that we struggled. She was living with dementia, and we struggled to keep her dry. And she had urinary incontinence. And she was always asking for orange juice. We put her on a toileting program so that we could help her learn and hopefully train her bladder, right? And it never worked. We figured out, it took us about 3 weeks. When she said orange juice, it meant she needed to go to the bathroom. It made no sense to any one of us, but every time she said orange juice, we helped her find the bathroom. And from literally learning that in 24 hours after, she was dry for 2.5 years after that. But that was her word. And for some reason, that was the word that stuck with her. And I just think it's unique because that's the word that stuck with her. She was telling us all along, but it took us, 3 weeks to figure it out. Once we figured it out, it's that puzzle, right?
It is just a puzzle. And Dina, it's so interesting that, you started by saying we tried to get her on a toileting routine and teach her. And it's, it sounds counterintuitive, but it does work. And part of the process is just figuring out what they're trying to communicate and how. I mean, that's an incredible story. So she was able to then be dry.
We had the code, right? We had the code word.
You broke the code.
Because for the other number 2, you could tell because she would start pacing and she'd do what you were describing, and we'd say, you need to go to the bathroom. And off we would go for that. But it was one of the most cool experiences I've ever had, learning that. Or a gentleman who had exit-seeking behavior, and when we took his coat out of his space in a community, then he wasn't exit-seeking anymore. His coat was his trigger. So figuring this out, it's really a puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it takes a third person to come in and look. I was at a conference one time and a woman came up to me and said, my mom has a dog. She's had the dog forever, and the backyard is enclosed, and she always would let, Fido out in the backyard and to do his thing. But now all of a sudden she is opening up the front door and letting him out, and he's getting lost. And the person that I was with immediately said, put a sign on the door that says, Mom, Fido goes out the back door. This is the front door. And that was all it took. She was able to read the sign. She was just recognizing a door. We had another man who was a wanderer, kept going out the front door. They put up a big, like a sheet that was decorated with like a bookcase. So it disguised the door. He never went out that door again because it looked like a bookcase to him. Yeah. So there are certain things, and again, when you're in the moment and you're living with it, you can't always recognize or think of a logical either explanation or solution, and sometimes it takes assistance. And come full circle, Elderwerks can help you with things like that.
And honestly, I can't tell you, I've had the privilege of working with many a family and have a conversation, and I know you have as well, Arlene, with Elderwerks. And just because we see things a little bit differently sometimes, they're like, oh, that's a really good solution. Okay, that makes sense. And that's why I know Jennifer and the whole team here at Elderwerks really has the passion and the knowledge. We recently did a calculation, just for anybody listening. We have over 200 years of experience with our 11 team members.
Makes
That
us sound very old, Dina.
it does, but divide that by 11. It doesn't sound as daunting. But I don't
And
see any. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, I'm sorry. No, I was just going to say, if any of you have any questions, I put my email back up on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You know, if you need one of our advisors for guidance, for placement for any of your loved ones in an independent assisted living or a skilled nursing facility, we can help with that. If you just have some questions about communication, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to respond.
And I would also add to that the home care piece. A lot of
Thank you.
people are looking for that little bit of respite because they're caring for their loved one living with dementia. I mean, let's face it, they need a break too. So our advisors would be more than happy to do that. As we close this out, just a friendly reminder, our Aging Better Expo is coming up on August 14th at Stonegate in Hoffman Estates. We will have over 12 classes on all aspects of aging, as well as 100 providers that really focus in the senior realm. It looks like it will be a fun educational day. And as we found from past expos, a lot of families find each other and create new friendships through this and support each other. So just want to remind you of that. But feel free to reach out to Arlene with any questions on today's presentation or here at Elderwerks. We're always here to help. Thank you for joining us today.
Have a great day, everyone.